Hello, I'm Dr. Ryan Anderson. I'm one of the co-founders of Telos U. This webinar today is designed to help you think about how to handle phone calls that you might have with your young adult son or daughter. Now, we're not talking specifically about the therapy phone calls or the student team calls. We're talking about the phone calls that you will have that are with them only, without members of the team involved. Now, we are fortunate here at Telos U to be in a position where you actually have a lot of access to speak with your son or your daughter. This can happen through the fact that they will, once they've completed their checklist and their basic work, at least have access to a phone with the ability to make phone calls and text you. So with that, there are a lot of wonderful advantages and opportunities that come from it. There's opportunities to connect with your child, to build trust, to collaborate with them on things, to reinforce their growth. There's lots of opportunities to heal tensions between you as you work out different concerns in different ways than they have gone in the past where they haven't worked out very well. And there's lots of opportunities to practice solidifying new and more adaptive manners of interacting between you and them. So these are very valuable. And we need to make sure that we're taking advantage of these opportunities as they come along. Now, there are also challenges that come with your student having a phone and having direct access to you without us as a factor in the conversation when it's going on. And it's very easy, you'll find, to get sucked into old, unhealthy patterns of interaction. Those same fights that you've had a million times, those same strategies of that lead a conversation to kind of break down and become something unhealthy and unhelpful. Those absolutely can and do happen in some of these phone calls. There can be a way that students use these phone calls as they're feeling anxiety because they're facing things that are difficult for them. They're being required to grow and learn and try new things. Oftentimes, phone calls become a method for them to try to download their anxiety onto you, make their anxiety yours, make their problem yours to solve. And that can become very problematic very quickly. These phone calls can also be opportunities to try to triangulate, so to form alliances against other people, whether it's members of the team, whether it's against the therapist, whether it's against Telos as a whole, whether it's against the other parent. There's lots of opportunities for them to try to exploit emotions and team up with you as an ally against someone else, or team up with someone else as an ally against you. There's lots of opportunities for manipulation, and it can even escalate to emotionally abusive patterns. All of these are just inherent in the ability they have to talk with you without any filter or any go between. And knowing that these things will be a part of your experience, we need to help you learn how you can approach them and work through them in a way that is helpful. Now, this really matters. One of the things that we found is how you work on these phone calls with your child, these independent phone calls, is extremely influential on their progress here at Telos U. It can be a very powerful tool in facilitating and accelerating their growth, but it can also be something that promotes and amplifies their struggles and even leads them to shut down and to regress rather than to progress. So there's lots of things about how you manage these phone calls when we're not there by your side that are important for you to learn and to develop some skills and some confidence in to help you as you work in these areas with your child. Now, let's talk about the positive side of things. I want to make sure that you are aware of those opportunities to connect positively. In all that we do, we don't just want to deal with things when they're going wrong. We want to spend most of our time and our energy helping things go right. And these personal phone calls that you have with your child are an opportunity to do that. And there's lots of different ways, sharing things that are going on in your life, especially talking about things that you're doing to use the experience of Telos as an opportunity to grow and improve yourself. That's highly motivating for the student to see that you are doing work as well. Acknowledging their efforts, even if their efforts haven't quite paid off into results yet. We need to be able to celebrate the things that they're trying to do even before they turn into full-blown successes. Notice when they're doing something that's more mature or more in control, or that they've developed some kind of new skill that you're noticing, and compliment them for it. But make sure that the compliments that you're giving are real and grounded in observations of things that you see them doing. Express affection. Let them know that you love them. Let them know that you're proud of them. Have a sense of humor. We're here to do work, but we also need to not take ourselves all too seriously. So have some fun, connect around common interests, and in everything you're doing, what you're trying to do when you're speaking with your child is to make deposits in your emotional bank account. Now, that doesn't mean that you can keep these calls to just all sunshine and flowers and easy things. There will inevitably be some harder things that come up. But as you have these opportunities to build positivity, do not let them pass you by. Now, one thing to be aware of is that when we are speaking with your child, or you are speaking with your child on the phone, one of the things that you're going to experience is something called psychological isomorphism. Isomorphism essentially refers to the fact that certain patterns that they've formed in one area of their life, they tend to reproduce in other areas of their lives. So their way of seeing things at home is going to be pretty similar to the way they see things here. Their way of dealing with certain emotions at home is going to be pretty similar to the way they deal with emotions here and relationships and everything like it. And we're working on making changes, but those changes are not immediate. So do not be surprised when you see that they are repeating certain patterns in the way they're trying to approach you. And this is especially true because for us to help them grow, we do have to help them move outside of their comfort zones. Now, we are never just creating discomfort for the sake of making them uncomfortable. We are helping them face real life things that they will be uncomfortable with. And as a result, some of their old maladaptive patterns for dealing with discomfort will come out from time to time as they try to solve the problems presented to them here at Telos in a similar fashion to the way they were trying to solve those problems before they came to us. Now, it's important to have some perspective on this. When you're trying to go from old patterns to new patterns, that is actually a lot of work and it's very intimidating. It involves having to unlearn old behaviors, which have now been so practiced and well practiced that they are reflexive. And you may even be doing them without realizing that you're doing them. And at the same time, we have to help them learn and then become confident in new behaviors. And that's a scary mode in the middle where you just don't feel very good at the things you're trying to do to deal with the emotions and the relationships and the challenges. So you know what you're trying not to do, but you've gotten very good at doing the maladaptive thing. You know what you're trying to do instead, but you're not yet very good at the adaptive thing. And we also have to deal with the underlying thoughts and feelings, perceptions, and beliefs that went into the development of those maladaptive patterns in the first place. It is a little bit like trying to build an airplane while you're in free fall in the air. Now, we build some scaffolding around you to help with that, but I think it's important as parents to have some understanding and some compassion of what that's like. And that may help you understand sometimes the emotional reactions and the attempts at manipulation or control that your child may sometimes use in the process of trying to grow and achieve what they've come here to Telos U to achieve. It's an intimidating process, and there's definitely room for compassion. So as a result, when our students are feeling that, it's not uncommon for them to try to double down on their old maladaptive patterns of dealing with stress. So if they tried to isolate before, they may try to isolate now. If they turned to aggression and anger before, chances are we're going to see that now. If they were involved in blame shifting before, we're going to see that happen now. That's to be expected. And again, most of the time, this is an unconscious thing. This is their mind trying to do what has felt like it has worked well for them before. And as is human nature, when it feels like it's not quite working here, well, they tend to escalate. If you hammered the nail and didn't go in, you hit it harder. If you used meltdowns before to get people to lower their expectations of you, they'll hit it even harder. We should expect that. And one of the places that that's going to come out is in these phone calls with you. So it's important to recognize that that's a sign that they are beginning to confront the things that will help them change. And they're now trying out their old coping skills harder to see if they can get them to work. So part of what needs to happen there is that we need to be very careful to not reinforce the old maladaptive patterns by allowing them to work. So if the child download their anxiety onto us and then we allow that to be, oh, well, the teacher's not teaching well enough or the therapist isn't doing their job, it's not that there's not room to examine how things are going. But if their difficulty with managing themselves always gets to be someone else's problem and they escalate and they make us do that again here, then what we're going to do is reinforce that, and it becomes re-entrenched and harder to root out and harder to teach them to do something different instead. So we have to be very careful about those reinforcers as they bring them out, as they try that doubling down. Part of what our students need and part of what we need you to help us do that we literally cannot do without you is the students need to experience that their maladaptive ways of trying to leverage you as their parents will no longer work. Now, just as you can imagine, it's a little bit like when you have someone who's used to putting in their quarter and getting something out of the vending machine and it doesn't give it to them. What do people do? They push the button more, they shake the vending machine, they pound on it. They're like, no, this is supposed to work. Give it to me. I feel robbed. They will do that to us. And most likely they will do that to you when they're trying to see if these old coping skills really aren't going to work for them anymore. And that's part of what will happen in some of these phone calls. Now, there's the other side of the risk, right? You can also come across as, well, now I'm holding boundaries and now I come across as very cold and unsympathetic and indifferent to my child's feelings. That is equally damaging to reinforcing the old maladaptive things as well. So we need to be very careful about not falling into that trap on either side. What we do need to do is approach this with a combination of warmth and compassion and healthy boundaries. And that includes a lot of things. Empathy. Empathy means that you can care about what they're feeling. Even if some of those feelings are self-inflicted, even if they are overblown, even if they are irrational, we can care that someone is feeling what they are feeling and demonstrate our care for it. We can be emotionally responsive. And part of what that means is that we're really looking to help them figure out how to resolve the cause of their emotional suffering. That doesn't mean that we necessarily buy their explanation. We have to get a lot wiser and help them dig deeper. And we are going to be responsive, never dismissive of the emotions that they bring to us. But that does require discernment. It requires being aware of old patterns and ways that we got sucked into old patterns with them that ultimately were not effective, and not allowing ourselves to reproduce those. It does mean we need to have boundaries. One big part of this is that if they have concerns with team members or things going on in Telos, one of the boundaries is always going to be, yes, I will talk with them, but you need to talk with them too. And I'm going to go and I'm going to gather more information. And I'm not just going to step in and fix what you're telling me the problem is. You need to be a part of this too. They need to own the solution. We cannot be handing them solutions. That is crippling for them. And always, one of the things you're going to want to be doing is expressing faith in the other members of the team, encouraging them to work with those members of the team. If they have concerns about members of the team, to take that through the proper channels of talking to them, talking to supervisors, talking to the team as a whole, to try to make sure they're resolving any of those areas where concerns may exist. Now, throughout this, there are a lot of traps and landmines and grenades that we don't want to set off. We need to be aware that as they're approaching us, they are in distress around these growth areas. And there are a lot of strategies that they might use. They might misreport anywhere from exaggerating to minimizing to completely fabricating something to try to get an emotional reaction out of you. Now, what we're not saying is assume everything they're saying is a lie, because that's not true. But we are saying be open to the fact that maybe not everything they're saying is completely true or accurate or a good read on the actual situation. They may try emotional escalation, whether it's they're shutting themselves down in their room or they're yelling, they're screaming, they're getting angry, they're getting aggressive. They may bring demands and ultimatums. They may do emotional hostage taking. That's the whole idea where I know you care about what happens to me. So if you don't let me do X thing here, which is this level of unhealthy for me, I'm going to purposefully take it to the next level and do this thing to myself, which is even more unhealthy for me, just to punish you for holding this boundary with me. There's lots of different ways that people do that kind of emotional hostage taking. And it always preys upon the idea that they know that you actually care about them. It's a game of chicken. We already talked about that tendency to try to download their emotions. I'm having a negative emotion. That's your problem, mom and dad. You guys need to solve it. We're realizing we don't have the power to solve that. This is actually your problem. Now we can work together with your team and figure out how we can support you in solving that problem. But the person who's going to solve that problem is you. A lot of our students have also learned that there's a tremendous amount of power in powerlessness, that if they just simply won't do things, that's distressing to other people. We call this in business and economics the principle of least interest. Whoever is least interested in an outcome, like your child going to school, attending therapy, actually getting out of bed, showering, whoever is least interested in that has the most power. And they can use that to try to leverage. And they'll try to make deals. They'll try to get you to promise, look, if I just get out of bed for 6 weeks, then, let me come home and I don't have to do the therapeutic work that I'm here to do or something like that. They may also decide to take a look at your soft spots and go after you with emotional attacks. Or they might just entrench themselves deeper and say, okay, the more you try to help me to do something healthy, the more unhealthy I'm going to be. You've got to back off. I'm sure one or several of these probably sounds familiar to things you've experienced with your child in the past. So where we see this, a very common example is something that tends to happen early on in their stay at Telos. If you've not yet watched the Telos U Slow and Steady webinar, please do. You'll notice that this illustration on the slide comes from that. So it's not uncommon that as students come into Telos and they kind of get over their honeymoon phase, what we can see coming is there is a distressed call that's going to come to the parents. And in this distressed call, they're going to talk about how this place is too restrictive. It's not what you told me it would be. The other people here are way more ill than I am. I don't think I really need this. You keeping me here is a sign that you don't love me, that you don't trust me. Man, there's all these bad things. Do you know this guy over here is a cannibal and that guy over there is a sex offender and this guy over here killed 3 people? And they'll just kind of really say whatever they know they need to say. And some of them are going to be their real concerns, but they're also going to embellish. And in that embellishment, they're going to be saying things that they know are designed to get a specific emotional response from you, to activate that instinct that you have to protect and preserve your child. We here at Telos, we are not using behaviorism on students. We are not depriving anyone of food, water, sleep. We're not using physical aggressions. We're not doing any of those things. Your child is not in danger, but they are facing their hard stuff. And they're scared and they're intimidated. And they reach a point where they would like someone to make it so they don't have to face their own hard stuff. So it's very easy for parents to get lost in the emotions and just to take what their child is saying wholesale. But what we found we need you to do is to listen and then to verify, to seek to learn more, and to maintain the boundaries of saying, hey, look, there are reasons we chose Telos. We needed to work through these things. I appreciate you telling me about the struggles and concerns you have. Let's talk to the team. Let's make sure that we've shared these concerns. Let's get some more perspective. Some of these may be things that are just part of your adjustment. Some of these may be things where we do need to do some advocacy and kind of figure out what to do about it. But what you're always doing is you're aligning not against the student, but you're recognizing the student is trying to align with you against the team to re-engage old maladaptive attempts at coping. You need to make sure that you're saying I am aligning with the team and with you, and if we have concerns, we will talk about them, and we will also help you figure out what we need to help you begin to do to start managing your emotions better as well. And there are things you can always do. We have an acronym called LAV: listen, affirm, validate. You should always listen. Give them time to say what they have to say. Now, if things cross over into the realm of them being emotionally abusive to you, you don't need to just sit and listen to that. But listen to what they have to say. Affirm. Let them know that you hear them, you're understanding. Reflect back to them so they can know, this is what I feel like I hear you saying. Validate. Now, when I say validate, don't validate. Yes, I'm sure that child is accountable, and I'm sure that person has killed 3 people. And I'm certain that your therapist is just in this to make millions of dollars and doesn't care about you. That's not what you have to validate. What you can validate, you don't have to agree with things that you don't think are true. You don't have to say that you're on board with things that they are saying, the conclusions they're reaching, or even how they're approaching things, but you can validate the emotional experience they are having and show that you care about the fact that they're having that emotional experience. That's very important to do. Some things you should always do is when they say, hey, this thing is going on, you should always check out what they're saying. Okay, well, let me look into that. I'm more than happy. I want to talk, at school, this teacher just doesn't even teach English. Oh, okay. Well, let me talk with Laurie. Let me talk with the school. Let me talk with the therapist. Let's find out what's actually going on in there. Maybe there's some more perspective. So the idea of trust but verify, always check it out. Look deeper. Don't let the report be where you stop asking questions. Let it be where you start. And even if there are some legitimate concerns, so maybe there is something we do need to adjust in their schooling, and that does happen sometimes, still be mindful that that can be both true and there can also be parts of your child's emotional struggles, and we need to deal with both, not just the one. Seek to connect and collaborate with team members rather than seek just to place blame. Avoid ever making any plans, deals, or promises without an overt discussion with the team, without having the team there. Don't talk about discharge dates without the therapist. Don't talk about, well, we're going to alter X, Y, or Z without a discussion with the team. Have the team involved. Don't let there be backroom door deals. That's exactly how we undermine our ability to be effective if that kind of communication is going on. One thing that you also need to make sure that you always keep in mind is the role of discomfort in growth. When people are growing, they will be uncomfortable. That's not necessarily bad. Yes, we need to calibrate and be thoughtful and scaffold to make sure we're supporting properly. But even when we're doing everything right, your child is going to be a little uncomfortable. And you have to figure out how you're going to be okay with that, because there's no path to growth without some discomfort. And always, anything you're hearing from your child, please keep the team in the loop. Now, there are a couple of things that, depending on how this communication with your child goes, you might need to do. There may be times where you need to let your child know, you know what, this conversation has got heated enough. I'm feeling lost enough in this conversation. I don't think either one of us is doing very well in this conversation. I want to put a bookmark in this conversation. And we're going to wait until your spot to be able to discuss it effectively. Or, you know what, I want to take this to family therapy. I feel like we need to have the therapist in on this conversation with us for right now. We'll eventually get to a point where we can have this conversation without it breaking down, but I think I can recognize it's broken down and I want to wait. And we're going to talk about this in therapy. There are almost certainly going to be times when you're going to need to realize, okay, wow, some of this is me learning to deal with my own emotions better. And there may be some very specific things I need to do to learn to handle what goes on with me emotionally when my child has what's going on with them emotionally. There may be times when you may need to put boundaries about when you're making yourself available to talk. I think it's not healthy while your student is here to make yourself available 24/7. So if they call you at 3 in the morning, don't answer. Have healthy boundaries. Some people need to say, look, because of where we are in our ability to manage these conversations, I'm available for you to call at these times. If you call outside of those times, then I will try to call you back inside these times. So you will learn to what degree you guys are able to have that be free form versus to what degree you need to be able to put some healthy boundaries about when, how often, how much, and what you do on the calls. And you may also need to be able to say, look, these are hard enough for me that I need to develop a specific plan of responding to this way that my child is approaching me. And I need to practice it. And I need to practice it when I'm not on the phone with them so I can begin to get confident in how to do this. These are things that may be necessary. So keep in mind also, as you go through the process of the family systems module and you learn Telos tools, many of them will be very helpful in learning to be effective in talking to your child, specifically our relationship continuum, the processing approach, and the consultant pattern. All three of those have training videos around them. All three of them are things we also offer some advanced training around in family days. So definitely make sure that as you're working, that you are constantly working on learning, developing, and practicing these new tools, because each one of these will help you in this particular task. So now that you've made it through, there's a piece of homework that I would like to give you. I would like you to reach out to your child's therapist, and with that, to do a couple of very specific things. One, identify what you think the most likely challenges are that are going to come up for you in phone calls with your child. Some of them are fairly predictable, not all of them, but you'd be surprised how many of them you could say, you know, I could see it going this way, and you'll be right. From there, work with the therapist to identify what the old relationship patterns are around those kind of things and to understand maybe responses that would not be effective or old patterns that aren't going to be helpful if we continue them. And then from there, develop a specific approach of what you will do if those challenges come up and have that ready to go so that as you receive these phone calls, and especially one of the things that you'll find is that if your child is kind of using the phone calls to fight or manipulate, and they realize that you have developed an approach and that they're not going to get you to fall into old patterns or to collapse, they stop trying to do it because it's not working anymore. And they learn that they have to do something else. So do yourself the favor. Do this work early on. You'll save yourself and your student a lot of heartache, a lot of difficulty, and you will help them progress. We appreciate that you are a part of our team. We look forward to helping you get confident in managing these phone calls in a way that is conducive of your child's growth.